would you look at this? Look at all of this. This isn't even like most of the mess. Like, there's so much mess that you can't even see in this room. I've been trying to do my best to clean it up because I remember what it was like having to sift through this shit. You get these people who either they just straight up do not care about the state of their hotel room, or they made an effort to trash the place, or what they did was stay there for so long that the inevitable result of their stay was a big mess like this in the case of us staying here. Um, Whatever happened, you come into these rooms and you try to clean them, and the first thing you notice is like either just extreme levels of executive dysfunctioning on the part of the person who was last in this room, or them just straight up not caring about the guy who was forced to clean this shit up. So I want to try to do my best to clean this shit up to the best of my ability before I leave, because it's the right thing to do, it's the polite thing to do. I remember what this job was like. But in the meantime, I've been sitting here thinking about what it was like for me growing up. Specifically, my first day of school. This is actually a story I've never told before on this channel. I was inspired to think about it because I was drinking some of this, not the greatest wine. In fact, this wine is kind of bad, but I was drinking some of that, and I was kind of considering my whole relationship to alcohol in general, and my history with it, and the psychology behind why I seem to keep coming back to that thing, even when, I've stopped several times or tried to stop several times. Well, why do I keep coming back to that thing? And I ended up getting on this train of thought, where that led me to thinking about my first day of school. Because the first day of school I ever had, I was held back. I went into 5th grade when I was supposed to be in 6th grade. I was extremely scared. My stepbrother, for the time that he was around, back when he was around, he used to always tell me this shit about how I was going to get beat up if I went to school. My parents were constantly fear-mongering about me being in public school whenever I would ask to go into public school. They would always tell me, no, you can't do that, because it would mean you get beat up. It would mean that you get, bullied. And of course I didn't want that. And I was under this assumption that what they were saying was true. And so what happened? I built up fear, an immense amount of fear about going to school. And in the time period where I was just basically spending like a year not doing anything, which led to me having to get held back for a year, my parents were just talking about how hard public school was going to be for me, warning me again and again and again, but then also telling me things to kind of make me feel guilty for the fact that I was even having to go there at all. Everything they said basically amounted to, we're sick of you, we're sick of you causing all these problems for us, so now you're going to go be somebody else's problem. That was basically what they said. That was what it amounted to. Sometimes they explicitly said that. And it was this weird thing where I heeded their warnings, like I internalized all of it. I thought a lot about what they were saying, but it didn't change any of my behaviors at home. So all these threats kept coming and these warnings kept coming during this time period where I was waiting to go into public school, and then eventually one day I just straight up, went into public school. And there came that day when I was being introduced to all the classrooms, and I was made to be put in my classroom. And of course, in the rural South, they don't get a lot of new students, especially in the school district I was in, they don't get a lot of new students. And so, people wanted to talk to me. Everybody was excited because I was a new kid. they never get new kids. They loved new kids. And I had no idea how to react to all of this attention that I was getting, because I had been made to feel like any social interaction I would have was like a test or a challenge for me, where there was going to be immense consequences to anything that I did. So growing up, with my parents or my stepbrother and people in their orbit, I'd make a mistake, or I would be shy, or I would be awkward in some way, unaware of myself or my surroundings, and I would get yelled at and punished for those things, sometimes physically reprimanded for those things. And even though I may not have necessarily thought that was what was going to happen when I got into school, with all those warnings that I got about the school, I think on some level my body believed it was going to happen, because I got in there with no real prior experience with other kids. I didn't have experience with my peers, so I came in there, and pretty soon I was the target of bullying, because these kids were trying to be open and friendly and nice to me, even though I was very shy. And their attempts to be nice to me scared me so much, because they would say all this stuff. I'd be so quiet, I'd have no idea what to say. And it was terrifying. I remember my body feeling like it was physically shuddering, I was so scared. And I was doing that. I remember making myself do this too, because this was something that I had to learn to do at an early age. I remember bottling all of that up and making it kind of squeeze onto the inside of my body, all this fear, so it wouldn't come out with shaking or anything like that, or anything on my face. But inside, it was just ripping away at me. I felt just gut-wrenching terror. Terror is what I felt. And they kept saying this stuff, and it was specifically at this table that they put me to, that was a 4-person table. So I was kind of in the middle, and I was looking around me, and these kids were so close to me at this table, because it was a small table, even though it housed 4 people. And they were all trying to talk to me. They were all trying to say things. I just felt like I was being encircled. I felt like there was this dangerous circle surrounding me, and that it felt like almost like someone was going to kill me. It was terrifying. It was actually more terrifying than experiences I had where someone actually did try to kill me, if you can even believe that. And I think maybe the reason I felt that way, or I thought like that, was because this was something entirely new to me, that I had only ever been warned about, that I had no prior experience with, no practice with. And there I was, just feeling ashamed and humiliated, just so in my own world. And what I did was tell the teacher, hey, I want to be moved to the back of the class. Well, I didn't even say, I just said, can I move? And then I moved all the way to that back seat in the back of the class, where I was sitting with no one. I was just sitting by myself. And everybody stared at me in that class. Just everybody stared at me. And I think that had some kind of profound impact on me. I mean, it wasn't profound in the same sense as my early childhood experiences, where I started to develop this kind of temperament, this kind of safe personality, but it really solidified a lot of really bad stuff that had been growing and growing for a while by that point. And I sat at the back of that class for a while. I became a little more outgoing as the year went on, a little more, but in general, I would usually sit by myself. And that was me, scared as all hell, shy as anyone there ever was, more or less. And, sometimes Just when I have to go to the door to sign for my alcohol, or even just going to the shops to get more of this stuff each day, it's like I feel so scared just interacting with the clerk. Like, just interacting with the clerk, I feel scared. But I do this stuff because, some days I wouldn't even be able to leave my house. I was basically truant every year that I went to school. One of those years, I literally had to go to truancy court because I would stay home and then refuse to leave my room. I was basically a school refuser. Like, I would just refuse to leave the room. And I would kick and scream, and I'd hide under stuff. Eventually, I just started lashing out constantly at school because I was trying to get kicked out of school. I was just trying to cause as many problems as I could to get kicked out. And before I got suspended, I was like one more trip to the office away from getting suspended. Um, I, my parents took me out of school again. And I never went to school again except for a couple of months, at 2 different times, and then left. And during that year where I was just not going to school due to my lashing out and ISS and everything else, yeah, I was just staying in my room. Sometimes for over 6 months at a time, I wouldn't even leave my room. Not my house, not my room, not anything. And I'd say people were worried about me, but nobody was even really, like, addressing it. I was just kind of off in my own little world. And even now, as I have visited a whole other country, I've visited multiple whole other countries, I still struggle just to leave my room. And sometimes, in order to be able to do that, I need this shit.